What is the most unsettling encounter you've ever had with a stranger? Disturbing encounter outside Toys R Us 2015. June 15, 2015. I took my children to Toys R Us after school because they both had gift cards. We wandered around in the store for a bit. They both got lollipops and Pokemon cards. We left the store and I helped them get into the car. They were 6 and 7 at the time. Before I could pull out of my parking spot, a blue van, a Pontiac Montana, pulled in front of me, blocking me in. I didn't know what to think, but I was pretty annoyed. Just then, a man got out of the van and approached my window. I got a horrible feeling when he did this, so I kept my window open just a crack as he asked me questions about my car. Like how much did it cost? He then showed me a thumb drive that had a label with my name on it. I had never seen it before. I had never seen this man before. He was missing teeth. That is the main thing I remember about him. He said the drive had 24 hours of photos and footage on it. He said he would send it to the RCMP and I would never see my kids again if I didn't go with him to clear things up. I asked if it was a joke. His tone intensified and he became agitated, insisting I go with him, saying, "Don't play dumb." He knew my daughter's name because he said it at one point. I pulled out my phone and started dialing 911. He said, "Oh, I can do that too," and acted like he was going to pull out his phone. When he saw I was actually calling, he rushed back to his van. I saw he was on the phone with someone as he drove away. I spoke with 911 and they told me the police would take an hour to arrive since I said the man bothering me had already left. I told them to meet me at home, not wanting to stay there any longer. When the police came to see me at my house, they basically acted like I was crazy or a deadbeat. Nothing ever came of my report. Things I later learned because my dad and I did some investigating when the police would not. At the same time the van pulled in front of me to block me in, a gray truck had pulled behind me. Both vehicles left the parking lot at the same time. My email account had been hacked that morning. I had purchased the car from a dealership that had taken my photo when I bought it. It was a photo of me and my children in front of the car when it was new to me. The dealership, I only realized at this point, had posted the photo with my license plate visible and my full name. This incident messed me up for a very long time and I am still not convinced it wasn't an attempted kidnapping of some sort. 2. Weird neighbor walks around at 12 a.m. every night. Something strange has been going on in my neighborhood, and I honestly don't know what to think anymore. A few years ago my family's house was broken into while we were away from home. Nothing too major was stolen, but it really shook us up. After it happened, we talked with a few neighbors to see if anyone had noticed anything suspicious that night. That's when one neighbor pointed towards a house down the street and said something like, "It's probably them. They're thieves." Apparently, people around have been suspicious of that household for a while. But here's the thing. The guy living there is in his 40s and he lives with his elderly mother who is probably in her 70s. They never say hello, their house looks totally neglected, and the yard is overgrown with a tall hedge that basically hides the whole place. The weirdest part is that the man goes out every single night around 12:30 a.m. and walks around the neighborhood. Sometimes he just stands around or looks at houses. He keeps doing this to this day. I looked him up and it turns out that the man works as a glazier, a person who works with glass windows. I don't have proof of anything, but the whole thing feels unsettling. 3. Creepy guy I keep bumping into. The first time I encountered this guy was a few years ago. For context, I used to be homeless and after that, for a longer time, lived in a very unsafe environment. So I used to spend pretty much all of my free time living on the streets and exploring in the city, only going back home to sleep. I used to go for long skates to drown out the emotions and cope with what I was going through. My city is crowded and it is difficult to find quiet space. After a while though, I started figuring out my favorite parks and trails. The ones where I knew I could find solace and relax for hours with a beautiful view, undisturbed, knowing there were few eyes on me or people to judge. Some of my most peaceful memories were chilling out in these places. There was the odd weirdo or junkie that made me uncomfortable, but I kept to my own space and they kept to theirs. There was one guy though, who without fail, would stare at me non-stop whenever we were within sight of each other. I already feel intense anxiety being observed, partly from being queer and autistic, so this always made me uncomfortable. He was often sitting in a gazebo or riding a bike. He seemed to be around his late 40s. I'm in my early 20s for reference. With weather-beaten skin and is much bigger than me. He was always with a bike beside him. I think he was homeless too, although he said he wasn't and was just holidaying and camping in different parks. I often get lost in deep thought and have found him staring at me from a distance quite a few times. I usually relocate after seeing him because it just feels weird. A while after seeing him a few times, I was relaxing alone in a large park, high and enjoying nature. He came up in front of me, I was in a corner surrounded by bushes, and started introducing himself to me, saying he had seen me around quite a bit. He asked questions like where I lived and about my story. I was in shock and anxious so my answers were very brief. I was trying to show disinterest while not offending him at the same time. He started telling me his life story, which was weird. Then he stared uncomfortably long at my body and said he liked my outfit. It was pastel goth and anime inspired. He asked me if I was going to be here for long and said he would be here later in the day as he had just set up his tent. I didn't know what that meant. I couldn't think of anything to say. I wasn't ready for this and stared back blankly. I lied and kept saying I actually needed to go somewhere, to which he finally left and said he would see me around. I felt bad for a while after this. I felt rude and like I was being mean not giving this person a chance to be friendly. But something felt off about him. My body always froze up and my heart raced whenever I saw him. It was accompanied by this sick feeling. There were a few similar situations to this where he would suddenly show up and say he remembered me, talking like we knew each other. I reacted similarly and either said I had to go or looked away and pretended to be distracted. One time he was talking to another male friend around the same age as him. This other guy seemed totally unstable. He was screaming and threatening some other guy within a few seconds of showing up. I quickly excused myself too. It wasn't until a few days ago that things really started to get creepy. I was revisiting some of my favorite trails again. I ended up getting caught out in a storm and was hiding under the only shelter for a long way, soaking even with my umbrella. This guy was wearing a raincoat and rode up to me under the shelter, leaning his bike against a table while glaring at me. I didn't recognize him at first and thought, yeah, of course, I'm visibly queer and he's another bigot. He walked a few meters away and seemed like he was looking at something, then came back and rode off on his bike while glaring at me again. I didn't see why he needed to leave his bike in the shelter, like it was already soaking wet. Anyway, when the storm died down, I needed to use the bathroom and went to the nearby one. I barely noticed there was a locked stall and took the one next to it. It was nice and warm, so I made myself comfortable, doing up my hair and smoking lots of weed. So I went out to wash my hands, and before I could start, this guy was standing to the side grinning and saying something to me. I regretted pulling out my earphones and walking up to answer before I could wash my hands. It just felt rude and I had the impression he was watching before I got out. I was coughing in the stall from smoking too much weed, so I'm sure he knew it was me inside. He started asking personal questions again, like where I lived and what I was doing there. I was freaking out again. It was just the two of us for ages and I was scared to give him any info to follow me. So I lied, terribly, and I could see anger flash across his face. I really like your outfit. But that skirt you were wearing last time, about a year ago. Or was it a tutu? I love that and you looked gorgeous, he said while grinning ear to ear and staring up and down at my body. Okay, thanks, I muttered, panicking and barely able to think. I'm looking for action, he said. I awkwardly paused for a while and he kept staring. What do you mean by that? I asked. I'm looking for some sexual action. Like with you. He grinned. That was when I noticed the stall that was occupied next to me had its door open and it looked like he had set up a bedroom inside of it. I felt really scared now. I'm not looking for that, I replied. He smirked and said, at least you're being honest. Honesty will get you a long way in life. He muttered more stuff while still staring and grinning. Okay, I've got to go now, I said and walked away quickly while he was talking. So yeah, that was my last encounter with him and I really hope I don't see him again. I felt vulnerable and violated the last time. I was high out of my mind and was barely able to walk. Things would have been bad if he tried anything. Also, who knows how long he was watching my stall. It is so disturbing. 4. Stalker in University Campus. Back in March of this year, I, 21M, attended a non-academic event on campus with my friends. The attendees were mostly students from the humanities and arts fields, which made us stand out as we were the only computer science students there. After the event, my friends and I went to the library, which is a few floors below the venue, to do our coding assignments on our laptops. While we were working, a familiar face was staring at me from about 25 feet away from our table. I remembered seeing this guy from the event. He was an art student, judging by his ID lanyard, since our lanyards are designed based on our college. I didn't mind at first, until I noticed that his eyes were locked on me. He would only look away whenever I tried to look back at him. This lasted throughout my entire stay in the library, which was an hour, until my next class started. The second encounter happened when I was in class. He was peeking through the window in the door, staring at me as he walked past the classroom. I didn't care at first until it started distracting me. He consistently walked by the corridor a couple of times until our class ended, and then he disappeared. What was even creepier was the fact that art students on my university's campus mostly have their classes in the humanities building, as opposed to us computer science students in the engineering computer studies building. It made it questionable why he was there in the first place. I thought that was the end of my encounters with him. However, the third encounter happened after gym class, when I went into the restroom to change clothes. I noticed the guy was behind me, but I completely ignored him as I walked down the corridor towards the restroom. While changing in the cubicle, I noticed that my previously worn shirt, which was drenched in sweat, disappeared from the cubicle door where I had hung it. It turned out that creep had followed me into the restroom, pulled it over the top and was sniffing it. He dropped it on the floor and rushed out of the restroom the moment I opened the door to confront him. I finally had enough of this guy, so I decided it was time to file a complaint against him at the disciplinary office of my university. The following week, I went there to ask for a complaint form. However, to my surprise, he had been expelled from campus exactly the day before my visit. It turned out I wasn't the only victim. The staff there said he got expelled for sexually assaulting another male student from a different college. 5. Guy kept waiting for me at the train station, and now keeps showing up in the gym. About 3 months ago, something strange started happening. I was at the gym when a guy approached me in the middle of one of my sets. He introduced himself, I can't remember his name, and after some small talk, he suddenly mentioned the route I walk to work and exactly where I get on the train. I live in a commuter town outside London with only 2 platforms and crowded trains, but I'd never seen this man before. I also learned he works in the same part of London as I do. After that, for weeks, he started waiting in the exact spot where I normally get on the train. Again, I had never noticed him before our first conversation. He never spoke to me or really acknowledged me, but he always appeared where I would stand. I only commute into the office 3 times a week, so I hoped it would stop on its own. A few weeks later, I left my house at my usual time for work and saw him walking right across the top of my driveway. My street isn't busy at that hour. I'm usually the only one outside, so it definitely stood out. Not long after, my boyfriend visited and came to the gym with me and we saw the same guy again. We hoped it was obvious that I have a boyfriend. Eventually, the man stopped appearing at the station, and I even changed my commute time. I haven't seen him there since. I thought it was over, but a few weeks ago he started showing up at the gym about 15 to 20 minutes after I arrived. I've been going to this gym consistently for around 2 years and recognize the regulars. He was never one of them until recently. I usually go at the same time because of my schedule, but on weekends I shift my gym time by an hour or two and he still manages to show up. The only time he doesn't appear is when I work from home and go during my lunch break. Now I'm not sure whether I'm still being stalked or if it's all a coincidence, but since I have to walk home from work at night now, it's making me anxious. 6. Random guy followed me to my friend's house. So this all happened yesterday. At around 8 a.m., I was going to pick up my friend to go to school. We are both 17, and saw a car behind me in a turn lane that is normally empty. Now, that wasn't weird in and of itself. Sometimes there are cars turning where I turn, just not usually, so I didn't think much of it. But I had a weird feeling, so I kept an eye on the car from my rearview mirror. We both turned, and then he kept right behind me as we were going down the street. Again, that isn't exactly strange because it was a one-way street with only one possible turn right at the beginning. But I decided, if he follows me onto the next street, then he's probably tailing me. Well, guess what he did? He turned onto the next street, just like I did. He parked right outside my friend's neighbor's house as I was taking the circle drive, and he looked at me as I was going to pull into my friend's driveway. He beckoned me over, looking me dead in the eyes. I didn't go over, thank the Lord, but my heart was hammering. I texted my friend ASAP and told her to come out so we could get in the car. While I was waiting for her, I kept an eye on the dude. He got out of the car, opened his trunk, grabbed something from it, I couldn't see it from my car, and went up to the neighbor's door 3 times. He never knocked, never said anything, as far as I could tell, but he definitely went up more than once. Finally, he got back into the car. He circled around once and then left. I haven't seen him since, but it's been bugging me. It's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to me, even as a 17-year-old girl, and I genuinely think that I dodged something terrible, even though there wasn't any evidence that would lead me to believe he was actually going to kidnap me or something. Trust your instincts, ladies. 7. Elderly male neighbor starting to creep me out. I bought my house in 2021, and the guy across the street happened to be someone I worked with before he retired. It was kind of nice to have someone I knew at first after being new to the neighborhood. However, it has mostly just driven me nuts, and I feel like it has gotten progressively creepier. At first, he was kind and sent me a card. One time he caught me outside and pretty much wouldn't take no for an answer for me to see his house. I found this weird as I'm the new homeowner. Anyway, he had retired because his wife became very ill and needed care. So he forced me to tour his house and say hi to his wife, which I did. Then he told me, "Don't be rude, have a seat and visit." This was very uncomfortable for me as his wife wasn't all there and I didn't know her to begin with. Anytime I was outside attempting to do anything, he would come tap me on the shoulder and scare me, even though I had my hat on and earphones in because I did not want to talk. He would just go on and on about himself. That winter, he took care of my sidewalks without me asking, which was a nice gesture. He would drop off homemade food, ice cream from a local shop, drinks from a coffee place, etc. However, there was a brief period where he didn't talk to me because I turned in a co-worker of mine for sexual harassment. He was close with him due to former law enforcement work. I would try to say hi here and there and he would ignore me. I didn't want any bad blood between us. I made peace with it and figured he would leave me alone, which was kind of a win for me because I like my privacy and I'm introverted. Until one day I had a package delivered and he called me. I didn't answer, so he went over to look to see if it was his package and left it lying on the public sidewalk. He constantly watches my porch and bothers me about my packages, saying people stole them, even though I have a doorbell cam and don't need him staring at my porch all day. I've been working on finally getting the outside of my house a facelift for when I eventually sell, and he runs over, bothers me, and yaps on and on. Fast forward a little bit, and his wife passed away. He keeps trying to invite me into his home for dinner, and I say no thanks. I've declined about 12 times. If I'm outside, he tries to ask me, so I have to look out the window to even see if I can take my garbage out in peace. I have no interest in being alone in a house with a 72-year-old man as I'm a 29-year-old female. He is relentlessly asking me, and I have started ignoring his texts because I'm tired of saying no. One of the last texts he sent me was as soon as I left my house. He said, "Hey, when you're done with whatever you're doing, come over for supper." I feel like he's staring at my house all day long. Sure, he might be lonely because his wife passed, but I am a very introverted person. I don't want to be bothered by this man, and I also find it highly inappropriate and draining. I have to run to put my garbage can out every week. I feel I can't get any yard work done without him bothering me. I'm going to put privacy screens on my front porch so he can't see shadows through the curtains of my big front living room window. I've just had enough. If you have ever had a neighbor or stranger make you feel unsafe like this, let me know in the comments.
Thanks for watching. If you got this far, leave a comment, like if you liked it, and follow for more.